impeach Mr. Speaker. And I want to talk to the people that represent the Meru community. I want to assure them that whatever decision their senator will make is for the best interest of the Meru people. And I want to assure them that their future will be bright, if not more bright, Mr. Speaker. And what they need is service delivery, not individuals. Whatever decision that I'll make is for their best interest, because they elected me to make some decisions. Some are soft decisions or hard decisions. But what they need at the end of the day, they will ask their senator for 5 years, what have you done for us? But as I finish, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage all of us in a verse from the Bible, Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, which says that in every situation, no matter what the circumstances, be thankful and continually give thanks to God. For this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. So whatever you do, thank God. Whatever happens to you, thank God, because we always should give thanks to God. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Christo Lasige.
Speaker, the Parliament of Kenya has gone through a great deal in a very short amount of time, many firsts, and it is utterly painful for me to know that the world keeps seeing us time and time again under such lugubrious circumstances. However, Speaker, it has taught me many, many lessons, and it's also reminded me of many that I've known for several years, one of which I was taught by Tony Evans, which is, if all you see is what you see, then you don't see all there is to be seen. Speaker, I have never met the Deputy President. In fact, in the last 2 days, the first time we've ever shared any space together. And to be honest, I don't think that we have much in common. I personally feel like there is a lot to be desired in his leadership style, for me personally. However, instead of going to the Bible, I want to go instead into my own experience and draw some parallels. Mr. Speaker, of course, people know that I have glaucoma, and I've been fighting and battling it for several years of my life. And Speaker, when I first got my diagnosis when I was just a teenager in high school, I was told that it was imminent. There was no running away from my condition. And I didn't know at the time that I had anything that was going on. I was just going about my life, but inside of me and around me, there was a condition that was building up and building up and building up. And I had no idea what was going to happen in the future. Mr. Speaker, now I've been left blind, and I cannot see in front of me even when I put my hand in front of my face. Mr. Speaker, the parallels I draw with my life and the current hearing that we are sitting in today is that the Deputy President did not foresee this happening to him either. Mr. Speaker, I have also drawn parallels of feeling out of control, which I assume that he feels. Being given a diagnosis that seems imminent, that he cannot stop. Mr. Speaker, I also feel that he is probably feeling fear. That's what I've heard. Mr. Speaker, feeling betrayed, feeling angry. And I felt all those feelings because of a situation that I can draw parallels with in this hearing. And Mr. Speaker, I have been fighting and fighting, pleading and praying, trying everything in my power to mitigate, to stop, just like he has been doing in the last several weeks that this has been going on, Speaker. And it's funny that it's Blindness Awareness Month this month in October, because there are many lessons, like I said, that I have learned, and I wish that the public will also take from this experience. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the public understands that when they have their back to the wall, when they've been in any kind of battle, even when they feel isolated, there is something called golfer's elbow, which I learned. Golfer's elbow is the idea that, or is a condition that golfers usually have when they hold on to the grip of their club too tight for a long period of time, and they end up injuring their wrist all the way up to their elbow because they're holding on too tight to an outcome, too tightly. And I've learned that sometimes you just have to let that go. And I hope that the public can take that away from this situation. Mr. Speaker, we must move away from hegemony, the idea of being dominated by one group or a person or a company or a state, because we are a democratic republic and we need to move away from such ideology, such utterances, such behavior, Mr. Speaker. However, in the 11 counts, I have seen many that have no evidence, and I've seen some that do have some evidence. But I have not been particularly given confidence by the witness-in-chief, the mover of this motion, when I saw him up on the stand, Mr. Speaker. Although none of us can relate to what it's like to being a deputy president in this room for sure, we can definitely relate to the lessons that I've just mentioned. Mr. Speaker, make decisions today that will not betray you tomorrow. That's one. I also want to share that even though you're in a battle, whatever that might be, financial, personal, medical, whatever it is that you're going through at the moment and you feel like your back is on the wall and everything, all the odds are against you, remember that it gets better. You do better. You will experience better. And we will become better, Mr. Speaker. I will finish, and I hope that the senators will remember what I said to them yesterday from the Bible, Proverbs 17:15.
Senator Nzito.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think I cannot thank you more for affording me this opportunity at this late hour. Mr. Speaker, I stand right from the onset to say that I oppose this particular motion, Mr. Speaker, and I have reasons for doing so. Mr. Speaker, the key witness or the mover of the motion came before this House yesterday, Mr. Speaker. And although I'm not a lawyer, but I know that it is there in the rules of natural justice that whoever alleges must prove. The Honorable Mutuse was not able to prove any of the allegations or any of the grounds that he laid against His Excellency the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans were and are watching these proceedings. They were able to see the cross-examination and to hear the cross-examination of the Honorable Mutuse, Mr. Speaker. And I want to urge this House, Mr. Speaker, that if we want to uphold the dignity and the honor of this House, that Kenyans were and are still watching, you cannot impeach the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, on allegations, on grounds that were not able to, that the mover was not able to prove, Mr. Speaker. And that is what prompted the question, I think, by Senator WAMVAA, which later was asked by Senator Awakia Umtata, which you were able to stand down because it had already been asked, whose motion was Mutuse's? Because it was not his motion. He had no proof of any or for any of the allegations, Mr. Speaker, and that is why this House, in order for us to uphold, like I've said, the dignity and honor, we need to vote no to this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many that have spoken before me have talked about the woman, the adulterous woman that was caught in the Bible. Senator Kajwang put it even better, that they did not bring the man that she was caught in the act with. Mr. Speaker, we need to ask ourselves, how good are we? How clean are we? Are we qualified to throw the first stone, Mr. Speaker? I think that is the first question that we should ask ourselves. That as we judge the Deputy President, how good are we? How many mistakes, how many offenses have we ever committed? How many sins even have we ever committed? And God forgive us, and our fellow human beings also forgive us, Mr. Speaker. But the most moving thing, Mr. Speaker, is that we did not give the Deputy President an opportunity. I know, of course, the motion to defer this particular, to adjourn up to Saturday did not pass. But, Mr. Speaker, under Section 50 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, 50-0, Mr. Speaker, we need to give any person 50-0, that is 50, Mr. Speaker, 2F, to be present and when being tried, unless the conduct of the accused person makes it impossible for the trial to proceed. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy President was taken ill, according to what the council reported to this House. And Mr. Speaker, we did not give him an opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I draw your attention also to our Constitution, Article 145, Clause 5. The President shall have the right to appear and, not or, and be represented before the special committee, Mr. Speaker. We did not give him that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is wearing out, if not for anything, Mr. Speaker, I ask this House, you cannot condemn a sick person. Any one of us can get sick. I want to appeal to my colleagues, Mr. Speaker. Nobody chooses when to get sick and when to be in good health. You cannot, we cannot afford to judge a person, to condemn a person when they are in hospital, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to appeal to the members of this House that if not for anything else, you consider that the Deputy President has been taken ill and show the necessary compassion. And Mr. Speaker, I want to my majority leader is here, and he made a statement that was very disturbing, that even those that are saying that it can bring division should...
Senator Mogeni.
Mr. Speaker, sir, first on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of the great county of Nyamira, I want to send a message of quick recovery to His Excellency President Rigathi, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, the Bible says in the book of Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1, that there is a season for everything. There is a season to be born politically and a season to die politically. That's biblical. The Speaker, I've agonized. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through a lot of soul searching, Mr. Speaker, as I listened to the evidence that was tendered against, as I listened, Mr. Speaker.
Just pause the time for Senator Mogeni. Let us allow Senator Mogeni to be heard in total silence, please.
As a lawyer and a person who witnessed the birth of the 2010 Constitution, Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe, Mr. Speaker, that Kenya belongs to all the 42 plus tribes, Mr. Speaker. And what has disturbed me, Mr. Speaker, for the 2 days I've sat here, Mr. Speaker, what would happen to my community in Kisii and in Nyamira if we ran our government through this theory of shareholding? Mr. Speaker, as I speak tonight, Mr. Speaker, the people of the two counties of Omogusi, Nyamira and Kisii are victims of that theory of shareholding. That community, Mr. Speaker, called Omogusi, has got no even a single PS serving in government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we speak this evening, Mr. Speaker, the Omogusi people, Mr. Speaker, have been the biggest victims of this theory of shareholding. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution that we enacted in 2010, in Article 27, Mr. Speaker, clearly states that we should not discriminate, Mr. Speaker. I hope, Mr. Speaker, when I cast my vote tonight, I'll be sending a message from the people of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, that a government is formed for all the tribes in the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. I've agonized, Mr. Speaker, on the issues that have been brought in this motion, touching on the widow and the children of the late Governor for Nyeri, GACHAGUA. And Mr. Speaker, I wondered if adverse statements and inferences have been made touching on the conduct of the Deputy President against the widow of the former governor and the children of the late governor, the nephews of the Deputy President. Why, Mr. Speaker? I ask as a father, why, Mr. Speaker, did the widow and the children of the late Governor Gachagua swear an affidavit to dispel all the things that have been said against a scheme of swindling those children? Why, Mr. Speaker? Why didn't they swear an affidavit, Mr. Speaker? That has troubled me a lot. And as I cast my vote tonight, Mr. Speaker, I'll be casting my vote for those children who lost their mother, who lost their father, but who were not given an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to appear before this House and tell us, Mr. Speaker, that there has not been any wrongdoing from the Deputy President to those children. Count number 1, count number 8 is about the utterances that were made by the Deputy Speaker. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the person who will occupy that coveted position of Deputy President will reflect on what John says in chapter 3, verse 5. Mr. Speaker, the Bible says that the tongue is a small part of the body, but the tongue is also fire, and it's a world of evil among parts of the body. If the Deputy President had checked his utterances, Mr. Speaker, perhaps we will not be having this motion this evening. So, as we vote tonight, Mr. Speaker, let's also learn. Let's also learn from what the tongue has done to Honorable Gachagua. I will vote, Mr. Speaker, where I'm convinced that allegations against the Deputy President have been proved. I reserve my vote to be cast at the right time.
Senator Bunge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the position of the Deputy President of Kenya is very high. It is a very high calling. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we make a decision on the Deputy President of Kenya, I want to remind him that of those to whom more is given, indeed, more is expected of them. And he should not feel that he is being victimized because, Mr. Speaker, the highest standard of this Constitution in 2013, by dint of lack of integrity, the Deputy Chief Justice, Nancy Barasa, lost her job merely because she pinched the nose of Kwamboka. The Deputy President indeed did worse than pinching the nose of somebody. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy President, seeing the allegations against him, I can't imagine that he moves around with the moninga of man of faith and truthful man. Mr. Speaker, if really we must talk about faith, may I remind the Deputy President of a man of faith, a man of letters called Bill Paul. Bill Paul said, man of faith, that integrity is like virginity. You lose it only once. And when you lose it, you can never get it back. The Deputy President has lost that virginity of leadership. Mr. Speaker, coming from a community that paid for the price of inflammatory speeches in Likoni, in Molo, and in Trans Nzoia, if I had time, I would discuss what some of my relatives went through, including Pastor Yai from Ichina village. Mr. Speaker, during the tribal clashes of 1992 and 1997. I would like to remind the Deputy President of the post-election violence of 2007, 2008. One of the reasons why we had to have this progressive constitution that will be removing him, hopefully, this evening from office. Mr. Speaker, even as we ask the Deputy President to leave office, we must insist that the DCI and the ESCC and other investigative institutions must pursue this matter beyond this vote. I have on mind, Mr. Speaker, the activities of the intricate web of companies, up to 22, so to speak. The reason I believe young Mutuse could not bring all this, dear senators, colleagues, is because effort requires money, requires time to do all that research. Some of them you have to do clandestine for you to get information. I believe that if the Deputy President had taken the dog, we were going to completely undress him. We would have asked him to justify what activities each and every one of those companies was doing. It's part of the reason why he stepped down, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have evidence, which I don't wish to be part of the case, that as soon as the Deputy President's brother died, the wife went to the corporate branch of the cooperative bank and started crying there that the manager should stop the Deputy President from operating these accounts. Mr. Speaker, finally, the Deputy President must be investigated for the role.
Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I recognize the pressure of time. Mr. Speaker, I am here because of the kindness of the people of Migori County who sent me here that at such a time, Mr. Speaker, I need to be cautious of the Article 125 of the Constitution, which requires us as a House that in matters such as this, Mr. Speaker, we must behave like judges, because under Article 125 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, we sit as a High Court, Mr. Speaker. And in the words of Socrates, Mr. Speaker,
it has been non-stop broadcasting live from the Senate, and it is not over just yet. The debate on the floor of the House has now ceded room for the next event, the historic impeachment vote, the first one ever for a deputy president. Every end of the Constitution is stretched to its limit tonight as Kenyans witness what is the imminent removal from office of a sitting deputy president. It is a special and expanded edition of the News Gang here, the regular four, joined by a guest gangster duo of constitutional experts, Charles Kanjama and Abdikadir Mohammed. We will be talking through the momentous events of the evening once the voting starts. The News Gang will be here in just a moment once the voting begins, but for now, it's back to the Senate for the debate.
Listening courteously and considering soberly, Mr. Speaker, are more than half of the charges, Mr. Speaker. And I find that ground 1, 5, and 6 on the utterances of the deputy president, Mr. Speaker, violate Article 91 of the Constitution and Article 2, 32 of the Constitution. We cannot have political parties, Mr. Speaker, that are founded on the basis of ethnicity and dividing national resources on the basis of ethnicity, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, that would make the ground number 4, which actually also happened to be reason number 4 for why the Deputy President must leave office, Mr. Speaker, the violation of Article 160 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, of undermining the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. There was an imminent threat to the judges there, Mr. Speaker. You realize that in my judgment, Mr. Speaker, I excuse ground number 8 on the basis of the fact that there was no proof that there was a petition that was not filed, Mr. Speaker. But on the threat, Mr. Speaker, I think that the Deputy President stands impeached, Mr. Speaker. Ground number 9, Mr. Speaker, on NIS, Mr. Speaker. We know that this country has faced serious terror attacks, Mr. Speaker. And the moment the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, showcases the secrecy of deficiency in our security infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, and you know that under Article 240 he has platforms to be able to express himself, Mr. Speaker, it is a violation of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, on ground number 11, Mr. Speaker, on bullying KEMSA official, Mr. Speaker, it has been proven here beyond reasonable doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the Deputy President is not a member of the company that was listed. He's not an employee of that company, Mr. Speaker, yet he goes ahead and makes calls on behalf of that company, Mr. Speaker. That is impeachable. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I must call the Council of the Deputy President to order, Mr. Speaker, especially Council Paul Muite, Mr. Speaker, for actually practicing law in deceit, Mr. Speaker. You cannot say that at the level of the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, he was okay in this house the entire time, and then when asked, you are saying you cannot be able to account for his whereabouts, and you know that the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, also must be able to be taken care of by the DG of Health, Mr. Speaker, who could have given us a document to be able to substantiate whether the Deputy President is sick, Mr. Speaker. While I say sorry to the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, I think this kind of deceit should also be tantamount to further impeachment, Mr. Speaker. I do therefore say that on ground 2, 3, 7, 8, and 10, they are not substantiated. But on ground 1, 5, 6, 4, 9, and 11, Mr. Speaker, this is a fight against tribalism that is done by one individual that then we must...
Senator Osotsi, unfortunately, you only have 4 minutes because we terminate at exactly 10:30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll be so quick. Mr. Speaker, when the Deputy President was here, I remembered the saying of a famous philosopher, 19th century, Lord Acton, who said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mr. Speaker, a few of us here served with the Deputy President in the National Assembly. And when we were there in the National Assembly, the Deputy President was a very humble man, very simple, very social, and was rare to talk. But listening to the judges and having seen what has been happening around, this is not the same man. This is a different man. So indeed, I want to agree with this philosopher that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is, it may affect all of us here. So there is something we need to learn from what has happened today. Mr. Speaker, I also want to congratulate the members here for their decency and maturity in conducting a fair trial. Mr. Speaker, it is not true that the Deputy President has not been given a hearing. We had to adjourn this House for 2 hours to wait for the witness to come. He didn't come. And Mr. Speaker, you know that the tradition of this House, that sometimes we receive written submissions. We do that in our committees. We do that in public participation. So the members who are saying that he was not given a fair hearing is that is not true, because this House tried as much as possible to get the Deputy President to come. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about various laws and articles of the Constitution that the Deputy President has violated. But one important article of the Constitution that runs through all the charges, Mr. Speaker, is Article 131 of the Constitution, which read together with Article 147, clearly says that the Deputy President is a symbol of national unity. That is not the case, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you go ahead, Article 131(2) says that the Deputy President, by dint of Article 147, should respect and uphold and safeguard the Constitution. That is not the case. The Deputy President should promote and enhance the unity of the nation. That is not the case. The Deputy President should promote respect for diversity of the people and communities in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, that is not the case. So if there is any piece of law that is going to send the Deputy President home, is clear violation of Article 131 of the Constitution, because the Deputy President is the principal assistant to the President and therefore exercises powers of the President as per Article 131 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, if there is one charge, because we have 11 charges, that is going to send the Deputy President home, it's charge number 1. I listened to the evidence that was brought here by his counsel. That evidence of the coalition agreement of Kenya Kwanza was not sufficient, was not convincing. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, the Deputy President conveniently hid for...
Your time is up. Majority Leader, you may now move to reply.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to hereby reply, having listened to the contributions of my colleagues on this very important motion on trial by impeachment of the Deputy President, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua. I want to thank colleagues that have taken time to give their views, both in support and those opposing this motion, because that's how you grow a democracy, Mr. Speaker. We may not all have to agree on the same subject matter, Mr. Speaker, but the chance to even speak and say what you feel about an issue is an important attribute. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I agree with the contribution that was made by one of the advocates for the Assembly, that comparing what you're doing today with previously what used to happen, where in the 1 o'clock news, vice presidents will be changed without any notice. And the elaborate process, Mr. Speaker, that we have gone through up to this point is great for our country. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the National Assembly, the team of the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, that has presented us with information to help us make a fair judgment of this case. Mr. Speaker, I strongly disagree with those that hold the view that the Senate hasn't been as fair to the Deputy President as perhaps they would have expected. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, I think as a House, we did the best that was within our means. We granted the opportunity, was given sufficient notice, Mr. Speaker. It is only in the unfortunate circumstance of this afternoon where he was taken ill, Mr. Speaker, and I'd wish to take this time to extend my message of goodwill to him and wish that he can quickly recover and get on with his other duties, Mr. Speaker, both as a human being and should, whichever way this vote goes, Mr. Speaker, because it's not in my hands, but in the hands of the 67 jury that are here, Mr. Speaker, that he shall continue to thrive. I wish him well, Mr. Speaker. Like I observed earlier, this is a friend, and friends wish each other well under all circumstances. Mr. Speaker, you know, just as a final thought, I thought about the journey of the Deputy President and the tribulations that have occurred to him as inquiries to either his conduct or utterances. And I'm reminded of a book I once read, Mr. Speaker, by Senegalese satirist Osman Sembene, a book called Hala, where, Mr. Speaker, a very rich businessman by the name El Haji looks and desires a beautiful young lady by the name Ngone, and finally takes her in as a third wife. Unfortunately, on the same night that he marries her, he develops erectile dysfunction, Mr. Speaker, and is not able to consummate the marriage. Sometimes in life, Mr. Speaker, when you fall down, you have to prepare to get down before you eventually can rise up, Mr. Speaker. I do hope, Mr. Speaker, that even in this particular process, the Deputy President will emerge stronger, better, as a human being, as a leader, and that there can be better days ahead for him. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and wish that our colleagues in this House make a decision in the best interest of the country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now, honorable senators, these are the guidelines on how we're going to move forward. One, all honorable senators are eligible to cast their votes. Secondly, the threshold is 45 senators. So there ought to be 45 senators in the chamber. And we are going to vote for the charges separately. So we're going to vote 11 times. I now direct that the bell be rung for 2 minutes.
And there you have it. The debate on that is now complete, and the senators are now getting ready to cast their votes. As we have been told there by the Speaker of the Senate, they will vote on each ground. And the magic number that is needed to determine whether the Deputy President goes home tonight is 45. 45 senators would need to vote in favor of upholding the resolution by the National Assembly to send the Deputy President home. They will be voting on each of the 11 grounds. And what a day it has been, 2 days, but really on this particular day, when it started out with a carryover from 2 witnesses from yesterday. And then the key witness who was meant to take the stand today, in a manner of speaking, the Deputy President, failed to show up on account of illness. And we also heard from the doctors at the Karen Hospital explaining the reasons that took him to the Karen Hospital, where we understand he is admitted at least for the night, with his advocates seeking for an extension or some time until Tuesday next week, and the Senate making the decision to carry on with the process. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special edition, expanded edition of News Gang on what can only be termed as an historic day when the country is stretching and exercising this particular tenet of the Constitution, and that is of the impeachment of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. The gangsters are here, and like we said earlier, we are joined by constitutional experts Abdikadir Mohammed and Charles Kanjama. I think perhaps, Charles, let's get some perspective from you on what we've just seen happen on the floor of the House with the debate, and then explain to us this process that is now beginning.
So the process that is going on now is captured in the standing orders of the Senate, as well as the general outlines in the Constitution. And what has happened is that in the year 2023, the Senate changed their standing orders. And in the new standing orders, they have a whole schedule, the second schedule that deals with the procedure for impeachment of a president or deputy president. And they elaborate what will happen if the Senate is dealing with the impeachment trial in plenary, which is what is happening. And they indicate what happens with the trial, the opening statements, the cross-examination of witnesses, the closing submissions, the final comments by the senators, which is what we've been seeing, and then now they prepare to vote. And the standing orders are very express that each count shall be voted on separately, which is what we've heard the Speaker of the Senate actually reading to his members of the House of the Senate. And so they will vote on each of the charges, and if the vote is successful in favor of the impeachment resolution of the National Assembly, the Deputy President stands removed from office immediately. And we can expect any time after that there will be a Gazette notice confirming his removed from office, and the President now under the Constitution immediately, in any case within 14 days, can nominate a new person to come in as Deputy President. And this person to be nominated by the President can be nominated tonight or tomorrow morning. We are aware that the National Assembly will have a special sitting tomorrow. The Constitution gives them 60 days to consider any new person nominated for Deputy President. But they can even choose to vote tomorrow, the representatives of the people. So it's a very accelerated process. And what I would summarize by saying is that both the legal teams of the Deputy President and those who are supporting the impeachment are in a race against time to establish a new status quo, so that when the court, the three-judge bench, eventually comes to determine these many legal and constitutional questions about the process, they will be saying, preserve the current status quo. If the status quo is that there's a new person in office, as happened with the impeachment of Governor Mike Sonko of Nairobi a few years back, and Kananu was already sworn in, that status quo is likely to prevail. That's why there's a race against time. It's almost an indecent haste to get everything done. And that can explain even the decisions you've been seeing on procedural matters today, including on the question of whether there will be an adjournment until Tuesday.
Interesting. Sam?
Right. The events of the day. But I'm just wondering, Wakili Abdikadir, because now...
Sorry, Sam, just hold on one second. Let's listen to the Speaker.
That the National Assembly on the 8th of October 2024 resolved, with the support of 282 members, being at least 2/3 of all members of the National Assembly, that pursuant to the provisions of Article 145 in evidence of the proceedings of the National Assembly. Further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 150, 1B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate heard the National Assembly on the grounds for the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 150, 1B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate also had His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the grounds of his proposed removal from office by impeachment of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 150, 1B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Order 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate resolves to remove from office by impeachment His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the following grounds. 1. Gross violation of Articles 10, 2A, B, and C, 27(4), 73(1)A and 2B, 75(1)C, and 129(2) of the Constitution, and Article 147(1) as read together with Article 131(2)C and D of the Constitution. 2. Gross violation of Article 147(1) and 152(1) of the Constitution by undermining the President and the Cabinet and the effective discharge of the national government's executive mandates. Number 3. Gross violation of Article 6(2), 10(2)A, 174, 186(1), 189(1), and the fourth schedule to the Constitution by undermining devolution. Number 4. Gross violation of Article 161 of the Constitution on the institutional and decisional independence of judges. Number 5. Gross violation of Articles 3(1) and 148(5)A of the Constitution on the fidelity to the oath of office and allegiance. Number 6, serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under Section 13(1)A and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. Number 7, serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed gross economic crimes under Sections 45(1), 46, 47(a)(3), and 48(1) of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and Sections 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Number 8, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, defensive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. Number 9, gross misconduct that is incompatible with the high calling and dignified status of the office of the Deputy President and a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. His Excellency, the Deputy President has publicly attacked and undermined the work of the National Security Intelligence Service and its officers. Number 10, gross misconduct by openly or publicly insubordinating the President, who is the head of state and government. And number 11, gross misconduct by persistently bullying state and public officers. As I've already indicated, honorable senators, voting shall be done electronically. So at this juncture, I will ask honorable senators to pull your cards out of the delegate unit. Sergeant at Arms, kindly go around and pick all the unattended delegate cards. Sergeant at Arms, if you're done collecting the unattended cards, we're good. Now, honorable senators, you may log in back. As indicated earlier, we'll be casting our votes 11 times. So the vote you're going to cast at the moment is for charge allegation number 1, which is gross violation of Articles 10(2)A, B, and C, 27(4). I had already read it out. So from this moment, it's beamed on the screens. So honorable senators, once you've logged in, you may now proceed to vote.
Right, so what you're seeing on your screens right now is the electronic voting process that is ongoing. Remember, all the senators present in the House will be voting electronically on each count. Remember, the deputy president is facing 11 counts of impeachment. This is currently charge number one. Sam, numbers.
It's clear to say that the deputy president has been impeached.
Yeah, one count.
53 have voted in support of that ground. Everyone has voted because the total is 66. It appears in the Senate.
Yeah.
You just needed 45, which is 2/3. 53 is 80%.
Good. On that, Abdikadir, I just want us to understand, 11 counts, what is the threshold? How many counts does he need to be found guilty of for him to stand impeached?
One.
Just that?
Any single one. Yeah.
Any single one.
Because the motion could have just been one motion, one item.
Yeah.
There was no requirement for 2 items or 2 charges or 3 charges or 4, just one.
So what happens next now?
So it's a question, I think.
Wait, sorry, before you even go to what next.
Yeah.
So will they vote on the other 10?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
They will have to vote on...
They'll have to vote on each one until the end of the order paper. And the requirement is there were 11, they have to go down the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as it stands now?
That first one is done, and therefore the totality is, of course, they'll have to announce it, but the totality is from where we stand, he's impeached.
So what happens next?
He's legally out of office as we speak now, constitutionally.
Okay, all right. So this is...
I think the remaining 10 charges...
it's almost an anticlimax of sorts.
It ended so fast.
Just in the sense because, you wanted to see how the voting takes place over... all the 11 counts.
I think the problem is the electronics. Before, you remember, it used to be a physical vote. Right now, the electronics makes it so fast. But to follow up on an item that Charles had said earlier, which I think we were discussing off camera. What happens next? What happens next is a political process. Yeah. How fast that political process goes is how fast those in government want it to go, and those in government can be very efficient when they want to be.
Yeah,
so it's highly possible that we'll have a gazette notice out. It's very highly possible that we'll have a nominee sent to the National Assembly by very early tomorrow morning, and it's highly possible, as Charles has said, under Article 149, that they will be done with that by tomorrow. Now the question then that comes is, for cabinet members, for PSS, for high-level appointments, usually you have a vetting process with public participation, with a committee set up. Are they going to go through that process, yes or no? Yeah. My view is that if they wish to go that way, it's possible that they do. But this particular section doesn't require that. And Article 149, the language is to vote for the nominee, vote up or down. Yeah. Under 152, which is where the cabinet and other high officials come through, the language is approve. Approve presupposes a process of some form of process of vote. Is just like what happened right now. Yeah. It's a vote. Yeah. It's not consider and vote. It's just vote. And the perception is this is a very specialized process. Impeachment is really a closed, specialized process. Notice, for example, there are criminal offenses being alleged. Those criminal offenses, under normal circumstances, one needs to go to jail if they are convicted, one needs to be fined if they are convicted, and if that process ends, one cannot be charged again for the same offense.
Okay.
All those things are not the same case here.
I want you to hold that thought for just a moment, because I would like us to just update our viewers on this news that is just breaking. If you have just joined our live broadcast, the breaking news that is in is that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua tonight stands impeached, making history as the first sitting deputy president to be impeached by both houses of parliament. He was facing 11 counts, and they have voted on one. Well, they're, I think, voting on the second or the third one by now. But the threshold that is required is that he only needs to be found guilty of one count. And that was the very first count, charge 1, gross violation of the Constitution. And 53 senators voted on the first count that he has been charged with, thereby impeaching the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. What a dramatic day that has been, even as he tonight spends the night in hospital, having suffered chest pains earlier this afternoon. The process proceeding in the Senate, that is the second or upper part of the House, that's how they like to call it, as part of a bicameral process. And so, Jamila, on this day, and this has happened, you know, shortly before 11 o'clock.
And I find it interesting that Wakili has just said that as it is, it's only one count is enough to get him out. They just voted on the second ground. And it was really interesting that only 28 were for and 39 were not. So if this had been the first ground that they had voted on, he would still be the sitting deputy president. But it's interesting how the senators are voting on the second one. It was about also gross violation of the Constitution. But for this one, they voted with him. But as you said, Yvonne, and as Wakili said, that this is it. It's over. And you talk about a political... Yes.
Just to cut it short, because it's important to just explain that the first ground that the Senate has impeached or has voted to remove the Deputy President from office by impeachment is one that is touching on the sentiments that he, the utterances that he made about serikali ni kama kampuni ya shares. So that is which that they're supporting with 53 votes. The next one, the second one that has been defeated is the ground on insubordination of the president, undermining the president, where you have some 28 senators voting to agree with the ground, but another 39 disagreeing with it. This is the third one, which is on the gross violation and the fourth schedule of the Constitution. This is on devolution, the question of Nairobi County and Governor Sakaja. Already you can see that a majority, which is 45, are voting not to substantiate the ground, meaning he's not being impeached on this ground. So far, it's just the first ground.
Yeah, so there we go. It would then be, Linus, the infamous statements around shareholding and likening the Republic of Kenya to a company that would prove to be...
It was certainly the most likely charge out of all the 11 that would directly have a bearing on the future of the political career of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And it's one that members of Parliament, starting with the National Assembly, found it quite very easy to articulate. And even in the Senate, this is the low-hanging fruit, if I can call it that way, because this is one of the areas that the Deputy President, now former Deputy President, going by the result of the first charge, because as it goes, and the constitutional experts are in the room, Article 145, sub-article 7, actually, presumes immediately that the Deputy President ceases to hold office as soon as he is impeached, and that's the result of this vote. And the issue of the utterances around shareholding, you realize that that's where a lot of the strength of the motion mover was coming from, playing the clips that were collected, a majority of them from the media circles. And I think there is something else there.
Yeah, the independence of judges, that's ground 4.
Yes, that is ground 4.
Yeah, the independence of judges.
Which was about independence of the judges. Justice Esther Maina. Again, 51 senators have voted to impeach, meaning this is a ground that has been substantiated in the eyes and in the minds of the senators. Yeah. So that's the second ground of impeachment.
And that'll be quite an area of debate because if you look at the clip that was used in illustrating the attacks on the judge, if you play further down, just after where the Senate stopped reviewing the footage, you'll realize that more leaders actually were not very kind to the judiciary. So there is a bit of convenience also that will go into this political voting. On the clip that was used, the former deputy president was not the only speaker who expressed himself, especially in terms of attacking the judiciary. But again, this is parting times. I think he's paid the price. There are a few more people in the clip that will not pay the price, but he has paid the ultimate price.
And one of them was saying, a very important person in this country was saying that the time for judges hiding behind the independence of the judiciary to sabotage government programs needed to end. That clip was not played in the Senate.
It wasn't played in full, yes.
Yep.
Ah, yes.
Which count is this?
This
is ground 5.
And the count
on the oath of office and allegiance.
And let's see where that goes. If it goes,
yeah, they're voting to impeach
beyond,
on that one.
Just one more is needed. There we go.
Yeah. So it also succeeds.
Yeah.
46 voting in support. Oh, well, now 47 and still counting because the total number of senators is 67. It talks about obeying the Constitution and preserving it. 49 voting to impeach, 16 disagreeing with the ground, and 2 abstaining. Again, the third count has been sustained.
Wakili was talking about how political this process is. We'll not be surprised if we see a Gazette notice out tonight, and then
there you go.
The privileges that the Deputy President, the former Deputy President, had in terms of security and vehicles and all that. Could that be withdrawn?
It moves very fast, and those come with the office.
Yeah.
And if I was just to read the article that the gentleman mentioned, the Kaikai, it says if at least 2/3 of the members of the Senate vote to uphold any impeachment charge, the president or the deputy president ceases to hold office. It's just that fast.
Okay, Charles.
So the office, if you cease to hold office, the privileges of the office.
Yeah.
Now there was some discussion about can I hold, some background. The key is if you held office for 2.5 years.
Yes.
Even if you are impeached, you still retain. It's assumed that you have been a former deputy president. If it is for less than 2.5 years, that does not sustain. On the other hand, if you serve, now whoever comes in, if they serve for more than 2.5 years, that's considered one term.
So they will get perks at the end of...
They'll first of all get perks at the end, and 2, they can only run for a second term. In other words, the 2.5 plus is considered a full term.
All right, just pause for a moment, because this is the 6th ground, and once again, the senators have voted to find him guilty on count
ground number
6.
Serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under various sections of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. Some of the illustration of that was also the question of shares.
Yeah. That would seem to
48.
be... Yes.
48 out of 67. That is 71.6. Of course, they needed 45.
Yeah.
So how many grounds do you have so far?
Out of the 6, we have 4.
4
so
far.
Voting against.
Yeah.
Right.
So